At 3:47 in the morning on December 14th, 1944, Private First Class Vincent Marchetti crouched in a bombed-out cellar on the edge of Germany's Hürtgen forest. His breath crystallized in the frozen air, his fingers numb despite wool gloves wrapped around a weapon that had not been used in warfare for 400 years. 40 yards away, 3 German officers stood near a collapsed stone wall. One spread a map on the broken surface. Another pointed toward American lines, tracing coordinates with a gloved finger. The third scribbled notes in a leather-bound journal. Marchetti understood fragments of their conversation, artillery coordinates, firing sequences, a dawn barrage that would rain steel onto American positions along the ridge, his battalion, his friends, men who would die before breakfast because these 3 officers were about to walk away and make a phone call. The standard response was simple. Report to Lieutenant Henderson, call battalion artillery, request counter-battery fire. But Marchetti knew what happened next. American shells would scream overhead. The Germans would scatter. Their artillery would respond within minutes. And by the time the dust settled, the original target would be gone, but American positions would be exposed. Counter-battery duels had killed 30 men in his company that week alone. Every muzzle flash was a death sentence. Marchetti raised the weapon he had built the night before, a crossbow, not a medieval recreation, not a hunting toy, a genuine killing instrument crafted from jeep leaf springs, parachute cord, and shattered rifle stock. The draw weight was enormous, nearly 200 pounds, far beyond anything a traditional archer could manage. He had built a lever system to cock it, a hook attached to his belt that let him use his legs instead of his arms. The bolt was a sharpened tent stake, 14 inches of steel with crude canvas fletching. He had test-fired once into a frozen tree. The bolt punched through 3 inches of solid wood. He aligned the crude sights on the nearest officer's center mass, adjusted for the slight downward angle, exhaled slowly. The world narrowed to 40 yards of empty space and the sound of his own heartbeat. He squeezed the trigger. The bolt vanished. For a fraction of a second, Marchetti lost track of it against the gray dawn light. Then the officer staggered backward. Both hands went to his throat. No scream, no gunshot, just the soft thud of a body hitting frozen earth. Marchetti was already reloading. Muscle memory took over. The movements he had practiced through the night, fumbling in darkness, now executed with mechanical precision. The second officer turned, saw his companion down, opened his mouth to shout. The bolt hit him in the chest before any sound escaped. He collapsed silently. The third officer ran. Wrong choice. He should have dropped flat, crawled, made himself invisible. Instead, he sprinted toward the tree line, map still clutched in his hand. Marchetti led him by 2 feet, released. The bolt caught him between the shoulder blades. He managed 3 more steps before pitching forward into the frozen mud. 40 yards away, 3 German officers lay dead. Total elapsed time, 8 seconds. Sound generated, none except impact. No muzzle flash, no rifle crack echoing through the forest, no coordinates for German artillery to target. Marchetti sat behind the fallen timber, breathing hard, staring at the weapon in his hands. His first thought was about court-martial, unauthorized weapon, failure to report enemy contact through proper channels, possible violation of the Geneva Convention. He was not sure if crossbows were specifically prohibited. He had never considered reading the laws of war. His second thought was simpler. It worked. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing. This channel explores the forgotten stories of ordinary soldiers who changed history through extraordinary innovation. The algorithms favor channels with engaged audiences, and your subscription helps bring these stories to more people. Vincent Marchetti grew up on the Philadelphia docks, in a row house on Mifflin Street, 3 rooms for 6 people. The smell of the Delaware River thick through the windows every morning. His father worked as a stevedore, unloading cargo ships 6 days a week, coming home with calloused hands and a bent back. The pay was enough to keep the family fed, nothing more. Vincent learned early that survival meant using what you had, not what you wished for. At 13, he worked alongside his father during summer months. He learned to splice cable, repair winches, understood tension and load-bearing in ways most engineers never would. He absorbed physics through his hands, not through textbooks, the relationship between force and resistance, the behavior of steel under stress, the breaking points of different materials. He also learned to hunt rats. The docks teemed with them, thousands of gray shapes scurrying through cargo holds and along pier supports. Management paid 2 cents per tail, a bounty system that supplemented wages for anyone willing to do the dirty work. Vincent could not afford a .22 caliber rifle. Ammunition cost money he did not have. So he built traps. His first designs were simple: spring mechanisms salvaged from broken cargo lifts, triggers fashioned from door latches. But the early versions were noisy. The snap of steel drew attention, scared away other rats before he could reset. He refined the mechanism over months, used wound steel cable instead of flat springs, designed a trigger so sensitive that the lightest touch would release it, but so secure that wind would not trip it accidentally. His best design used tension storage, a wound cable that released with enough force to kill instantly, silent, efficient, reusable. By 16, he was collecting 40 tails a week, $2.20 every Sunday morning, enough to buy his mother fabric for clothes, enough to feel like he contributed. The skills seemed useless when Pearl Harbor changed everything. Vincent was 19, working full-time on the docks when the news came through. He enlisted in January 1942, motivated by the same patriotism that swept through working-class neighborhoods across America. The Army saw mechanic on his paperwork, assigned him to the 28th Infantry Division anyway. They handed him an M1 Garand and taught him to shoot. He was adequate, not exceptional, just another replacement heading to Europe on a crowded transport ship. By December 1944, the 28th Division had been fighting in the Hürtgen forest for 6 weeks. The forest was hell-designed by nature. Dense evergreens blocked sunlight, turned the ground into perpetual twilight. Artillery tree bursts sent shrapnel through the canopy in horizontal sheets. Trenches filled with freezing water overnight. Men rotted in their foxholes, feet turning black from trench foot. Bodies too cold to move, minds too exhausted to think. But the worst part was not the forest itself. The worst part was the sound. Every American weapon made noise. The M1 Garand had a distinctive ping when the clip ejected, audible for hundreds of yards. The Browning automatic rifle, the bar, stuttered with a heavy rhythm that German ears learned to recognize. The Thompson submachine gun barked sharp and short. Even pistols echoed through the frozen trees, sound carried in the Hurtgen. German forces used the noise to triangulate positions, calculate coordinates, call in mortars. The response time was devastating. A 5-second burst from a bar could draw artillery within 3 minutes. By the time American soldiers realized they were targeted, steel was already falling from the sky. Private Thomas Brennan learned this on December 3rd. He had been in country for 2 weeks, still had that replacement nervousness. A German patrol appeared through the trees at dawn, 20 yards away, close enough to see individual faces. Brennan did what he was trained to do. He opened fire with his Garand. 8 rounds in rapid succession. 2 Germans fell, the rest scattered into the underbrush. Brennan was reloading when the mortars came. 8 rounds in 30 seconds, direct hits on his position. He died with his rifle still in his hands, along with Sergeant Frank Doherty and 5 others who had been in the same sector. Private Raymond Hayes went next. December 6th, different scenario, same result. German sniper in the canopy, 150 yards out, taking pot shots at anything that moved. Hayes spotted him through binoculars, took careful aim, fired 3 times, hit on the second shot. The sniper fell. Hayes died 4 minutes later when artillery bracketed his position. The muzzle flash had given him away. Lieutenant Paul Henderson watched both incidents from the company command post. He was 23 years old, commissioned 6 months earlier, already looked 50. The war had aged him in ways that peacetime never would. He understood the mathematics of their situation. Every time his men engaged, they announced their location. The Germans had more artillery, better maps, faster response times. American infantry was being methodically exterminated by its own doctrine. Henderson brought it up at battalion, walked into the major's tent with data scribbled on paper, casualty rates, response times, correlation between gunfire and artillery strikes. "We are dying because we are loud," he said. "The solution is obvious. Suppress the noise." The major looked at him like he had suggested they fight with rocks. "What do you propose, Lieutenant? Harsh language? Suppressed weapons, crossbows, knives. Anything quiet. We need first strike capability without sound signature." The major leaned back in his chair. "This is a modern army engaged in mechanized warfare. We use rifles. We use artillery. We do not use medieval weaponry because some lieutenant reads too many adventure novels." Dismissed. Henderson returned to his company, watched 3 more men die over the next 5 days. Each one announced himself with gunfire. Each one deleted by German artillery within minutes. By December 13th, the company was at 60% strength. Replacements arrived, died, were replaced again. The survivors stopped learning names. There was no point in remembering someone who would be gone by Thursday. Marchetti had watched Brennan die. They had been in the same squad for 3 weeks, long enough to share cigarettes and argue about Philadelphia versus Chicago pizza. When the mortars came, Marchetti had been 40 yards away. Too far to help. Close enough to see Brennan's helmet tumbling through the air. That night Marchetti could not sleep, not from fear. He had made peace with dying weeks ago. The odds were bad. Everyone knew it, accept it, and move forward. But frustration kept him awake. The problem was not German skill or American weakness. It was physics. Sound traveled. Steel made noise. Every engagement was a mathematical guarantee of counter-battery fire. He lay in his foxhole, staring at stars through gaps in the canopy, and thought about the docks, about hunting rats with spring traps, about the fundamental problem of killing something without announcing your presence. Silence was the answer. He had solved this problem before. Around midnight he climbed out of his foxhole. The mud was frozen solid, crunching under his boots. He walked through the wreckage of previous battles until he found what he was looking for, a destroyed Jeep half buried in a crater. The vehicle had taken a direct hit 3 days earlier. Driver vaporized, nothing left but twisted metal, and the smell of burned rubber. But the suspension was intact. Marchetti examined the leaf springs in the darkness, running his hands over the curved steel. Each spring was 24 inches long, designed to handle 1,000 pounds of road shock. 2 springs working together could generate enormous force, enough to propel a projectile at lethal velocity. Parachute rigger cord was wound around one axle. Someone had been planning to use it for something. Never got the chance. Marchetti unwound 12 feet of the cord, tested its strength between his hands. Strong enough, flexible enough. The idea formed fully in his mind within seconds. Not a toy, not a historical curiosity. A genuine weapon built from modern materials under tension. The Jeep springs could generate massive force. The cord could serve as a bowstring. He would need a stock, a trigger mechanism, bolts. The technical challenges were significant, but he had solved harder problems on the docks. A traditional crossbow used wood under tension, released through a mechanical trigger. Marchetti would need to adapt steel springs, something with far more stored energy, to release smoothly without vibration or noise. The timing had to be perfect. Too much friction and the bolt would tumble. Too little and the release would be uncontrollable. He worked through the night, removed 2 leaf springs from the Jeep, each one curved and gleaming in the moonlight, laid them parallel, bound them with wire at the center point. That created a double spring configuration with roughly 180 pounds of draw weight, more than twice a traditional crossbow, enough to punch through armor at close range. The stock was harder. He needed something rigid enough to handle the spring's force, but light enough to carry for hours through frozen forest. He found it in a shattered rifle stock from a destroyed M1. The wood was scorched but structurally sound. He carved a channel down the center for the bolt to rest in, attached the springs at the front using cable clamps from the Jeep's hood. The trigger took hours. He needed a mechanism that would hold the drawn string under extreme tension, then release instantly without jerking. He built it from a door latch mechanism salvaged from a collapsed farmhouse, filed the catch point smooth, tested it 40 times before he was satisfied. Pull the trigger, the catch releases, the string snaps forward, simple, reliable. No moving parts that could fail in the cold. By 3 in the morning, he had a functioning weapon. The string was parachute cord, braided to triple thickness, anchored to the spring tips with figure-8 knots that would not slip under load. The draw weight was enormous. He could barely pull it back without mechanical advantage. His arms were not strong enough. He built a simple lever system, a metal hook that attached to his belt, connected to the bowstring by a short loop of cord. To cock the crossbow, he would hook the string, place his feet against the front of the stock, and straighten his legs. Body weight against spring tension, his legs could handle loads his arms never could. Bolts were the final piece. He made them from tent stakes, standard Army issue, steel cylinders designed to anchor canvas in hard ground. He filed the point sharp, added crude fletching from strips of canvas cut from a destroyed tent. Each bolt was 14 inches long, weighed about 4 ounces, not aerodynamic, not beautiful, but dense enough to carry momentum, sharp enough to penetrate winter clothing and the flesh beneath. He test-fired once. Aimed at a tree 20 yards away, the bolt punched through 3 inches of frozen wood, buried itself completely. No sound except the whisper of displaced air and the dull thud of impact. He stood there in the darkness, breath steaming, understanding what he had created, a weapon that killed in silence. The patrol on December 14th was supposed to be routine, reconnaissance into a sector the Germans had abandoned 2 days earlier. Lieutenant Henderson led personally, took Marchetti and 8 others, moved through the forest in a loose column. They found the cellar at 3:30 in the morning. What remained of a farmhouse, walls collapsed, but the underground storage space intact. Henderson set up an observation post, positioned men in a perimeter. Marchetti took the northeast corner, found a position behind fallen timber with clear sight lines across an open area about 60 yards wide. The rest happened fast. 3 German officers appeared, no infantry escort, walking openly with the confidence of men in secure territory. They stopped 40 yards from Marchetti's position, spread a map, discussed coordinates, planned artillery strikes, standard procedure, said report to Henderson, call battalion, request counter-battery fire. But counter-battery meant noise. Noise meant German response. And Henderson's company had already lost 30 men that week to counter-battery duels. Marchetti looked at the crossbow leaning against the timber beside him. He had carried it for 14 hours, had not told anyone about it, was not sure it would work beyond that single test shot. But the officers were 40 yards away. The morning was dead calm. No wind to deflect the bolt. He had perhaps 90 seconds before they would move. No time to report, no time to debate, just the simple mathematics of range, trajectory, and silence. 8 seconds later, 3 German officers lay dead. 0 sound generated, 0 counter-battery response, 0 additional American casualties. Lieutenant Henderson reached Marchetti's position at a crouch, saw the bodies through binoculars, examined the crossbow in silence. "You built this?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Last night. from Jeep parts. You killed 3 officers without firing a shot. Yes, sir. Henderson should have arrested him, confiscated the weapon, filed a report. Let battalion decide whether Marchetti had committed a war crime or performed a miracle. Instead, he asked a different question. Can you make more? If you are still watching, you are exactly the audience this channel was built for. Viewers who want the full story, not the simplified version. Take a moment to hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that this content matters. By nightfall on December 14th, Marchetti had built 2 additional crossbows. The components were abundant. Destroyed vehicles everywhere. Parachute cord in every supply dump. Tent stakes issued by the thousands. He refined the design as he worked. Smoother triggers, better balanced stocks, more consistent bolt weights. Lieutenant Henderson authorized it quietly. No paperwork, no official channels, just word to squad leaders. Marchetti is building something. Let him work. Private Eddie Sullivan took the first copy on patrol December 15th. German machine gun nest had been causing problems for 2 days. 2 operators dug into a hillside 35 yards from American lines. Every time infantry tried to advance, the machine gun opened up. Every time American riflemen returned fire, German artillery responded. Sullivan crawled within 20 yards, eliminated both gunners with 2 shots, crawled back. Total time, 6 minutes. German forces did not discover the dead crew until noon. By then, American infantry had advanced 300 yards. The bodies confused German intelligence. No bullet holes, no shrapnel wounds, just 2 men dead with 14-inch stakes through their bodies. The wounds made no sense. Modern armies did not fight with arrows. By December 17th, 4 more crossbows existed. Henderson's company distributed them to designated marksmen. Soldiers with hunting experience, steady hands, patience. The doctrine emerged organically without official guidance or training manuals. Use the crossbow for first contact. Eliminate sentries and officers. Create confusion and fear. Then switch to conventional weapons only when discovery is unavoidable. German forces began noticing losses. Sentries vanished. Officers failed to return from forward observation. Patrols went silent without radio contact or gunfire. The pattern made no sense. No muzzle flashes. No explosions. No evidence of American presence. Just men, dead with mysterious puncture wounds. A German intelligence report from December 20th, captured weeks later during the advance into Germany, described silent American infiltrators using unknown weapons. Another report mentioned possible use of experimental suppressed rifles or compressed air guns. One German officer theorized that Americans were employing captured Soviet weapons with subsonic ammunition. None of them considered crossbows. The weapon was too primitive, too absurd. Modern armies did not fight with medieval technology. The psychological barrier was too high. They could not imagine the answer because the answer seemed impossible. Oberst Friedrich Weber commanded the German forces opposite the 28th Division's sector. He was a veteran of the Eastern Front, where brutality was doctrine and surprise was expected. But the American tactics in late December confused him. His diary entry from December 22nd read, "American soldiers operate with unusual stealth. 7 officers lost this week, all to unknown causes. Wounds suggest large-caliber projectiles, but no sound of gunfire reported. Morale declining among forward observers. German patrols found the bodies, conducted field autopsies. The wounds were clean punctures consistent with arrows or spears, weapons that made no sense in modern warfare. One German medical officer theorized that Americans were using experimental flechette rounds, a concept that would not actually be developed for another 15 years. By December 27th, Weber ordered all officers to avoid forward positions unless accompanied by at least 6 riflemen. He pulled observation posts back 200 yards, forbade solitary reconnaissance. The measures reduced officer casualties but paralyzed German intelligence collection. They could not observe American positions without risking silent death. A captured German soldier, interrogated on December 30th, told American intelligence something remarkable. "We do not know what weapons you are using, but we know you are there, always watching. We cannot hear you, cannot see you, until it is too late." It is worse than artillery. The psychological impact exceeded the tactical. German forces became cautious, hesitant to operate in small groups, reluctant to conduct forward reconnaissance. American patrols gained freedom of movement they had not possessed since entering the forest. Intelligence collection improved. Ambushes became routine. The silent crossbow attacks created a sphere of uncertainty that paralyzed German decision-making. The statistical impact was undeniable, though it would take military historians decades to recognize the correlation. November 1944, Hürtgen Forest Sector, 28th Infantry Division, combat engagements 247. American casualties 1,156, 38% of division strength. German counter-battery responses 189. Average time from American gunfire to German artillery impact 3.7 minutes. December 15th through 31st, 1944. Same sector, same division, combat engagements 312. American casualties 730, 23% of division strength. German counter-battery responses 91. Average time from American contact to German artillery 7.2 minutes. The reduction in counter-battery fire correlated precisely with crossbow deployment. When American forces initiated contact silently, German artillery had no targeting data. Response times doubled. Effectiveness decreased by more than half. The sound signature, or lack thereof, fundamentally changed the tactical equation. Conservative estimates credited the crossbow tactic with preventing approximately 180 casualties in the final 2 weeks of December. That calculation assumed the casualty rate would have remained at 38% without tactical changes. The actual rate dropped to 23%, a 15 percentage point reduction across roughly 3,000 soldiers in active combat. 180 men who went home instead of dying in frozen foxholes. 180 families that received letters saying, "I'm safe," instead of telegrams saying, "We regret to inform you." 180 futures that continued because a Philadelphia dock worker knew how to work with springs. Battalion-level officers noticed the change but could not explain it. Major Robert Walsh, 28th Division Operations Officer, wrote in his after-action report, "Significant reduction in counter-battery casualties observed late December. Cause unclear. Recommend further analysis." The analysis never came. By January, the division had moved out of the Hürtgen, deployed to the Ardennes to counter the German offensive. Different terrain. Open fields instead of dense forest. The crossbow tactic proved less effective. It required close-range concealment, patience, conditions that existed in the forest but not in winter farmland. Lieutenant Henderson filed a formal report on January 8, 1945. Described the crossbow tactic in detail, requested official evaluation, recommended development of standardized silent weapons for infantry use. The report traveled through channels, reached division headquarters by January 15th, sat on a desk for 3 weeks. The response, dated February 9th, was exactly what Henderson expected. Improvised weapons not authorized for regular issue. Recommend continued use of standard infantry armaments. Crossbow tactic noted for historical record. No further action required. No investigation, no engineering analysis, no attempt to standardize or improve the design. The official position was that crossbows were a field expedient, interesting but not relevant to modern warfare. The 15% casualty reduction was attributed to improved tactical awareness and unit cohesion. Henderson showed the response to Marchetti. The private shrugged. "Does not matter," he said. "It worked. We are alive." The crossbows remained in use through March 1945, primarily in urban combat, where silence provided advantage. Marchetti built 17 total before the war ended, each one slightly improved from the last. Better triggers, refined draw mechanisms, different bolt designs. By April, his crossbow could consistently hit targets at 60 yards, generate enough force to penetrate winter coats and light body armor. He never received official recognition, no medal, no commendation, no mention in unit citations. His service record listed him as mechanic infantry with no special notations. The crossbow tactic appeared in no training manuals, no tactical reviews, no lessons learned documents. If this history matters to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. These stories survive through audiences like you. Vincent Marchetti survived the war. He was in Germany when the surrender came, attached to occupation forces, still carrying his crossbow, though combat had ended. He returned to Philadelphia in October 1945, took his discharge at Fort Dix, went back to the docks where he had started. He worked as a stevedore for 32 years, same job his father had done, unloading cargo ships 6 days a week, coming home with calloused hands and a bent back. The work had not changed while he was gone. The Delaware River still smelled the same. The rats still needed killing. He married in 1947, a woman named Rose from the neighborhood. They had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Lived in the same neighborhood where he grew up. The row house on Mifflin Street was gone, demolished in 1958 for highway construction, but he found another one 4 blocks away. He never talked about the crossbow. When asked about the war, he would say, "I was infantry, fixed things when they broke. Came home." His children grew up knowing their father had served, but knowing nothing about what he had done. He did not display medals because he had none to display. Did not attend reunions because the men he would have reunited with were mostly dead. The crossbow stayed hidden in his basement workshop, wrapped in canvas, oiled and maintained. He checked it once a year, made sure the springs had not weakened, made sure the trigger still functioned. A ritual with no apparent purpose. A connection to something he never discussed. His children did not learn about the crossbow until after his death. Vincent Marchetti died in 1989, age 66, heart attack, while working in his garage. They found the weapon while cleaning out his workshop, wrapped in canvas, spring still functional, string still tight. No explanation, no documentation, just the weapon itself and a note that said, "Worked in Germany, keep it." His daughter donated the crossbow to a private military collection in 1991. The collector recognized what it was, contacted military historians, began piecing together the story from unit records and veteran interviews. The obituary in the Philadelphia Inquirer mentioned his military service in one sentence. Mr. Marchetti served in the United States Army during World War II, stationed in Europe. No mention of innovation, no reference to lives saved, no recognition of the fact that he had changed tactical doctrine without permission or official support. The crossbow tactic disappeared from military use after 1945. No formal study documented its effectiveness. No training program adopted it. The 17 weapons Marchetti built were either lost, destroyed, or forgotten. The Army moved toward mechanization, air power, nuclear weapons, technologies that emphasized firepower over stealth, volume over precision. But the underlying principle survived. Modern military doctrine recognizes that sound discipline saves lives. That announcing your presence invites response. That silence is a tactical weapon. Suppressed firearms, subsonic ammunition, stealth technology, electronic warfare designed to blind enemy sensors. All descended from the same insight that led a Philadelphia dockworker to build a crossbow from Jeep Springs. The Office of Strategic Services, America's wartime intelligence agency, actually experimented with crossbows during the same period. They developed something called the Big Joe 5, a military crossbow designed for silent assassination behind enemy lines. Engineers with advanced degrees and government funding created a weapon that was never used in combat. Marchetti, with no engineering training and no authorization, created a weapon that killed 9 German officers and helped save approximately 180 American lives. The comparison says something about how innovation actually works, not in laboratories, not through committees, but in frozen foxholes by desperate men with steady hands. Military historians discovered the full story in the 1990s. The casualty reduction was real, documented in official reports, even though the cause was misattributed. The crossbows existed. One specimen survives in that private collection, donated by Marchetti's daughter. Conservative estimates now credit his innovation with saving between 150 and 200 American lives during the final months of fighting in Europe. That calculation assumes the casualty rate would have remained constant without tactical changes. The actual number may be higher. Every German officer eliminated silently meant 1 fewer artillery strike, 1 fewer American position compromised, 1 fewer company caught in the open. The broader lesson extends beyond World War II. Innovation in warfare rarely comes from engineering laboratories or strategic planning sessions. It comes from enlisted personnel facing immediate problems with inadequate solutions, from mechanics who understand materials and physics, from soldiers desperate enough to try something absurd. That is how real tactical change happens, not through committees or approval processes, not through years of testing and evaluation, but through individuals who see a problem clearly, understand the available tools, and act without permission. The risk is court-martial, dishonorable discharge, prison. The reward is measured in lives saved. In statistics that official reports attribute to something else entirely, in weapons wrapped in canvas and hidden in basement workshops for decades. The Germans never figured it out. Their intelligence reports from late December 1944 remain in archives, filled with speculation about American secret weapons and experimental technology. They never guessed that the answer was simpler and older than their questions. A crossbow, built by a mechanic, fired by a private, in complete silence. Vincent Marchetti never sought recognition, never wrote about his innovation, never claimed credit, never demanded the Army acknowledge what he had done. He went back to the docks, raised his family, lived the same working-class life he had known before the war. The only evidence of his contribution was a 15% reduction in casualties that Army analysts could not explain, and a weapon that military historians would discover 45 years after it mattered. That is the real story. Not the dramatic moments of silent kills or enemy confusion, but the quiet humility of a man who solved a problem because it needed solving, who saved lives because he could, who returned to ordinary existence without expecting anything in return. The crossbow was just a tool. The innovation was just physics. The courage was in risking everything to do what the regulations said was impossible. If you found this story worth your time, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. Share it with someone who needs to hear about the ordinary men who changed history. These stories survive through audiences like you, and if you want to explore more forgotten innovations from the Second World War, check the videos appearing on your screen now. Thank you for watching.